what the definition of insanity is.
If you clicked on this video, then I'm sure of two things. Number one, recently you've started a new game. It looked great and played well, but the spark was just not there, so you stopped playing it. You left it in the endless pile of backlog games in your Steam library, saying, "Oh, I'll come back to it later." And number two, I'm also sure this is not the first video of its kind that you're watching. I can't say if it's the 4th, 5th or even 10th, but what I am certain of is that you are looking for a definitive answer to why you can't enjoy games like you used to. That feeling of anticipation towards a new release, the ability to grind a game to 100% completion, and in general, the ease of just firing up any game and being able to spend a few good hours on it without feeling like there's someone watching over your shoulder. For the past few months, maybe years, you've been asking yourself, why am I not enjoying games like I used to? If you're looking to find the answer to this question, then I'm just going to spoil the end of the video right now and tell you that the answer is not something as reductionist as games are just worse nowadays. I think that's a very naive way of looking at it and doesn't address the core of the problem at all. If you decide to stick on for the rest of the video, then I can guarantee that you will get the cause of how it got to this point and if there is a cure to this fading passion towards gaming. First, let's start with what is not the problem. In the recent discourse that's been flowing on the internet, you're bound to have come across YouTube videos and articles clickbaiting you with titles like "Microtransactions are ruining gaming," "Gaming is dead," and "You're too old for games." All of this is nonsense. Let's dismantle them one by one. Even though I do consider that microtransactions should not be in games, they are not the end-all be-all that people make it out to be, and certainly not the reason for why you scroll through your Steam library for an hour and then turn off your PC. Well, unless you play Korean MMOs or sports games. In most single-player games, microtransactions are usually sold in the shape of resource packs, faster progression unlocks, and sometimes better gear that can reduce the grind. It's a form of relief that lets you pay in order to play less of a game that's not even worth looking at. Multiplayer games usually sell status in the form of skins, emotes, and sometimes gambling adjacent mechanics. The severity of them can vary from game to game, but once again, the games that are even worth looking at are the ones that don't offer any sort of gameplay advantage over the ones who don't buy them. What I want to say is that most of the time, microtransactions are either in games that are not even worth playing, or are purely cosmetic and don't hurt the game in any shape or form. It's very rare that there's a middle ground. Next, the gaming is dead agenda that has recently been pushed by black pill content creators who realize that trashing the newest releases and drama farming is much more financially productive than recommending indie games that push the medium in new directions. Gaming is not dead. While an increase in released games is bound to bring about more shovelware, it's also guaranteed to uncover more polished gems. At the risk of triggering the die-hard Souls fans when I hear this word, gaming has never been more accessible than it is now, both from a player input perspective and from a financial one. A 10-year-old graphics card can give you access to dozens of emulators and thousands of games released in the past 50 years. You don't have to spend $80 on the newest release to be able to enjoy gaming. And perhaps the most misunderstood one, you're just too old for gaming, or another variant of that is that you're experiencing burnout. It's neither. Imagine telling someone that they are too old to watch movies or read books. It's ridiculous. There's no magical age at which you suddenly stop enjoying a medium. I could see the burnout argument being a more possible cause, but realistically, unless you're a pro player who has to grind for 25 hours a day in Valorant, then there's really no reason why games should give you burnout. But just for the argument's sake, let's say that those are the problem. Let's say you find a game that doesn't have any form of microtransactions, it plays perfectly, the mechanics are butter smooth, the story is incredibly engaging, and the game is sold at a moderate price. And let's say you're a 20-year-old, which can be called old by any definition of the word, and you only get to play games twice a week. And yet, you still can't enjoy the game. And that's what makes this feeling that much worse. So, naturally, you try to associate the blame with the eternally regurgitated agenda. Gaming is dead. Before I go on to start this section, I first need to define the concept of pattern saturation. Pattern saturation is what happens when you've been exposed to a medium long enough that instead of experiencing something moment to moment, you start to recognize its structure instead. Sort of like a mad head, but minus the addiction. Basically, in the beginning you react emotionally. Things surprise you, there's a feeling of wonder and discovery, and you never really know what's coming because everything is new to you. But eventually you start to notice the pattern that makes up the structure, the paradigm, and you start anticipating, categorizing, and evaluating things compared to the previous iterations of the same paradigm. Joseph Campbell popularized the hero's journey. He claimed that when you reduce any story to its fundamental principles and simplify them as much as possible, they all kinda fall under the same structure and cycle. In no different manner, there's only so many cycles of a story that you can experience before you start to realize that it's just combinations of different elements. It's very similar to learning a language. In the beginning and intermediate stages, there's endless new vocabulary and grammar structures to discover. But once you reach an advanced stage, you kinda realize that language is just a system of patterns. I could write this sentence 10 different ways, but ultimately it still says the same thing. Now, here's what really matters. This process is going to naturally differ from person to person, and there's endless factors that can contribute to it. Pattern recognition isn't uniform. In some people, the action of noticing something might take longer, and by extension, those are also the ones that are going to be able to enjoy gaming for the longest. Luckily for them, when you don't notice a pattern, you also don't become desensitized to it. Now, here's the part that might upset some people, but I believe I have to say it. Generally, smarter people are going to speed through this process of pattern recognition faster. Pattern recognition is, in large part, a cognitive skill. People who are naturally more analytical, who instinctively dissect systems, mechanics and structure, will often exhaust the novelty of a game much sooner. In most fields, this ability is rewarded. In mathematics, for example, recognizing patterns leads to deeper understanding and satisfaction. The more you understand how a system works, the more elegant that system looks to you. However, in the context of gaming as a whole, not just a singular puzzle game, it will actually hurt your enjoyment of playing games. In the earlier phases of gaming, regardless of age, the whole process is one of discovery and wonder. Finding a new game, realizing there's a whole genre of it out there, trying more games like it, shifting to other genres, understanding the history that led to the creation of that genre and so on. This very long process is what's actually the most fun part of gaming. But as you get more accustomed to the pattern itself, to different genres and gameplay mechanics and story structures, you kinda get used to it. There's only so many ways you can skin a cat, or in gaming's case, there's only so many ways to climb a Ubisoft tower. When people say idiotic stuff like gaming is dead, it simply means that they've played so many games before and become so used to the patterns themselves that, of course, there's nothing that can incite them anymore. This is the step that really starts to kill gaming. It's very similar to a magician's trick. The whole point of what makes a magic trick fun to see is not knowing the secret behind it. Similarly, once you notice the patterns in gaming, be they the weapon wheels, the quest logs, climbing a tower to uncover a section of the map, the general story progression and the companion NPC pointing out the same solution to the same puzzle type you've done 20 times in other games, the whole wonder can only last for so long before it begins to feel samey and unfun. It's not the game's problem, it is you. You are the problem. Not as in it's your fault, but as a natural course of things. I alluded to it in the previous section, but why games? Why do we get so easily desensitized to games but not other forms of media? Even though games are infinitely more complex to develop compared to books or movies, unfortunately, they are also pretty limited in the underlying systems they have to offer. A game is, mostly, a series of gameplay elements and mechanics. Yeah, revolutionary knowledge, I know, but really, regardless of it being a third-person shooter or an RTS game, at the end of the day they are still a series of connected game mechanics. It's not necessarily the understanding of the mechanics themselves, but more so the understanding of the system that binds all of these mechanics together that makes games start to lose their spark. Music has scales, chord progressions and rhythms. Movies have framing, shot types and color grading. Books have tropes, character archetypes, and narrative structures. And games kind of combine all of these, but with the addition of an interactive element, gameplay mechanics. Let's say that your most played genre might be Souls-likes. When trying a racing game, you'll still feel like the spark is missing. Once you internalize the rules and systems, you just kinda realize that it's still the same process, but within a different genre. You still have to press a button to move the player character, be that an abomination made in the character creation screen or a sports car. You still have to confirm an action, be that picking up an item or buying a car, and you still need to progress to a level, be it a racetrack or the undead asylum. Even though a game can feel mechanically outstanding and be written in a deep and engaging way, at the end of the day, it's still a series of steps that you need to complete as quests or progression systems that have been mostly the same in all games that preceded it. The fact that a game stretches its time for much longer than a movie or an album only worsens the acclamation to the patterns they have to offer. Let's say you've put 2000 hours into video games, which is not that much for most people. Assuming the average length of a single-player game is 15 hours, with obvious outliers here and there, you'd only be able to play just around 130 games. In that amount of time, you could watch 1,000 movies or listen to over 2,000 individual albums. I think anyone who's watching this video has played way more than that, but for most people, the movies and albums numbers I just gave will usually put them in the enthusiast category by that point. And because games require input from the audience, that also comes with a demand for a level of understanding and interactivity that is bound to get repetitive. Movies, books, and music are largely passive experiences, and they rely on your emotional response and imagination. But they don't demand constant mechanical participation. You can recognize patterns in them, of course, but you're not actively operating the system that produces those patterns. That's why it might take more time to lose passion for a passive medium than for an interactive one, where the player input is the main driving force that progresses the game. A simple way to think about it is driving a vehicle versus being the passenger in one. When you're the one behind the wheel, you're hyper aware of your surroundings, but as a passenger, you can pass the same road sign 100 times and barely register it. So, what is the solution? Is gaming dead? Will you not be able to enjoy games ever again? Well, maybe. Honestly, I don't think there's a definitive answer to this dilemma, but I do believe that the more games you're gonna play, the less that spark will flicker. Another factor that I believe only serves to exacerbate the pattern saturation process is the overall discourse around gaming. Watching several day one reviews before buying a game, falling asleep to 5-hour-long analysis videos, watching streamers and let's players comment on the game definitely won't help at all. I really feel like you're losing the whole point of experiencing a game if you know everything about it before you've even started it. At the risk of sounding like a boomer, if you're part of the generation that grew up without the internet, the only way to gain access to information about a game was either through magazines or word of mouth. And I feel like we lost something along the way. Regardless of how clever you might have been when there was no internet, it still took time to experiment with a game, to discover the mechanics yourself. Nowadays, you can just look up Devil May Cry Secret Tech on YouTube and you'll be shown the craziest mechanics that are out there. Pattern saturation happens by itself as a natural process, but this whole gaming discourse community aspect will only accelerate the process. Every now and then you might come across a game that completely reinvents the wheel and really brings something new to the medium. So regardless of how many games you've played in general, because it's so different and you haven't yet got used to the progression system or mechanic, you can have fun with it. But that might happen once every few years, and if you're watching this video, then I assume you're looking for a better alternative. And I'm sorry to say it, but I genuinely don't believe it exists. Unless we find a way to wipe out our memory and forget all the meta-knowledge about gaming as a whole, then from today on, you'll only start to enjoy games less and less. A lot of these types of videos will recommend you to take a break or to expand your horizons. They will tell you that it's gaming's problem that you can't enjoy games anymore and that it's the microtransactions and the greedy publishers, that it's not your fault. But really, that's just not understanding the underlying issue. Sure, you could try different genres or types of games that are completely outside your comfort zone. like that RTS that you've never even thought about looking at. Or you could download that puzzle game that looks like a programmer's wet dream. Or get a wheel and try some racing sims. To be real with you, I don't think any of this will help that much. But what is definitely not going to reignite that spark is buying the 58th third-person open-world crafting mechanics stealth game that you've played a million times before and by this point have all the patterns engraved in your brain. I can assure you that if you give Assassin's Creed Shadows to a 5-year-old who's never played a game in their life, they'll love it as if it were the greatest thing ever created and say things like, "That used to be my childhood," when they grow up. They'll have fond memories of this game, even though objectively it might not be the best in the series mechanically or story-wise. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, a game is an experience, and like any experience, the first couple of times is always going to feel more special than 100th time. Really, the best solution right now is to play as little as possible and as selectively as possible. Only try to play what looks like the peak of the medium, so that you can at least enjoy the little drip feed that's left in the well. Novelty is finite, and once it's gone, it never comes back. If saturation is inevitable, you might as well control the rate at which you get there.
Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change.